Okay, let's get into this. Usually when we sit down to map out some kind of cultural battle or a political conflict, the lines are drawn pretty clearly.
They really are. It's easy. You've got the left over here, the right over there.
Exactly. You've got the progressives versus the conservatives, the woke versus the anti-woke. I mean, it is the standard operating procedure for the internet, and frankly, it's what we're all just used to.
It is comfortable. It's predictable. Everyone knows their team. Everyone knows who they're supposed to be yelling at. It's a very binary way of looking at the world.
Precisely. But today, we're basically throwing their entire map out the window. We are looking at a conflict that completely defies those traditional bounds.
It really does.
We're diving into what is, effectively a civil war. But this isn't happening between political parties. It's happening entirely within the right-leaning, male-focused online space.
And the stakes here are incredibly high. We're not just talking about who gets more subscribers or who has better Twitter engagement or who gets the most views on a reel.
Right.
According to our source today, this is a battle for the soul of an entire generation of young men, specifically Gen Z and the rising Gen L.
We're basing this deep dive on a really scorching piece of analysis by a YouTuber named Tanash Peter.
Yeah, that's a good word for it, scorching.
And before we get into the heavy stuff, and believe me, it gets heavy, I think we really need to profile, because his background is what makes this whole critique just land so hard. He isn't an outsider looking in.
No, and that's the critical distinction here. If this critique were coming from, say, a liberal journalist or a feminist scholar, the manosphere would just laugh it off.
Oh, completely.
They would dismiss it immediately as blue pill nonsense. But Tanash Peter, he identifies as a conservative. He calls himself an unapologetic Christian Zionist.
And maybe most importantly, he openly admits that he used to be part of the exact demographic these guys are targeting.
That's the key.
He calls himself a former blue-pilled simp who went through this huge political and spiritual awakening. So when he talks about the allure of these influencers, he isn't speaking theoretically, he's speaking the language. He's inside the house.
Exactly. He's sounding the alarm on the manosphere, and specifically these red pill influencers, from a position of, well, at least on the surface, shared values.
Right.
But his central argument, his thesis, is that these figures who all claim to be the saviors of traditional masculinity are actually godless frauds.
Wow.
Yeah. He argues they're brainwashing young men into a lifestyle of nihilism, drug use, and a distorted, he calls it a demonic version of manhood that is the absolute antithesis of God.
That is a heavy, heavy accusation. And the lineup we're looking at today, these aren't some fringe figures on the internet. These are the titans of the algorithm.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking Andrew Tate. We're talking Myron Gaines from the Fresh and Fit podcast, Nick Fuentes, and the streamer, Sneeko.
Kinnear calls them the new class of leaders.
So our mission today is to really unpack Tanash's argument. We want to understand why he believes this specific alliance of men is leading us towards something much darker than just, toxic masculinity.
Yeah, he thinks they're leading young men straight into a spiritual void.
So to even understand the argument, you really have to start where Tanash starts. He anchors his entire critique on a single viral video clip that was circulating. He treats it almost like a crime.
That's a great way to put it. It's Exhibit A.
So set the scene for us. What are we actually looking at in this clip?
Okay, so it's a nightclub. It's dark. You've got the flashing strobe lights, the bass is thumping, and in the frame, you see this sort of, Avengers-style crossover of the internet.
Yeah, like the whole gang is there.
The whole gang. You've got Andrew Tate, the self-proclaimed top G, of course wearing sunglasses indoors. You have Myron Gaines. You have Nick Fuentes, who's normally the suit and tie America First guy. And then you have Sneeko. They're all just huddled together partying.
Okay, so on the surface, that just sounds like a bunch of influence, right?
Yeah.
But Tanash points out that the context, specifically the audio, changes absolutely everything.
It's the whole ball game. The DJ is blasting the Kanye West track, Vulture. And the specific moment that gets caught on camera is the group vibing, dancing, bobbing their heads to the line in the song that explicitly references How Hitler.
That's the lyric, right? How I'm anti-Semitic, I just fed a Jewish bitch. And then that reference, and you see these guys, some of whom claim to be, devout Christians, some who claim to be patriots, just dancing to it.
Kanesh's reaction to this visual was visceral. He didn't just call it cringe or edgy, which would be the normal internet reaction.
Yeah.
He described it as looking directly out of hell. He said when he looked at that clip, he didn't see joy. He didn't see camaraderie. He just saw a void, a complete absence of relationship in God.
He calls it the J Brigade, referencing the Jewish question coalescing with the manosphere. He's basically saying this video is the smoking gun that proves all these different factions have finally merged.
Right. You used to have The red pill pickup artists over in this corner, and white nationalists way over there, and the streamers somewhere in the middle.
So now they're all in the same VIP.
Now they're one entity.
Yeah.
And pointing out the hypocrisy is Tinashe's main weapon throughout this entire analysis. I mean, take Nick Fuentes, for example. The guy identifies as a staunch Catholic.
He's all about Christ as King online.
All about it. Yet here he is, bobbing his head to a song that praises Hitler in a nightclub. And Tinashe asks a very simple question. Is this what Christian leadership is supposed to look like?
It's a pretty powerful question. Tinashe also notes some of the weird dynamics in the group itself. He points out that Tristan Tate Andrews' brother is there, but then he says Sneeko seems to be, what was the word? Unchaperoned.
Yeah, unchaperoned. He implies that Sneeko usually has a handler, maybe Kanye or someone from that camp. But in this specific frame, he's just kind of there, absorbing this energy.
Tinashe's point is, if you see that clip, these grown men who claim to be saving the West dancing to a track about Hitler, and your first reaction isn't deeply wrong, then you're already part of the problem.
It's already been compromised.
So that video, that's the catalyst, proof of this merger. But Tinashe then goes on to systematically break down each of these leaders to show why the fruit is so rotten. And he starts at the very top. And
Top G himself, the man with the Bugattis, the cigars, the whole escape the matrix spiel.
Now, usually when people critique Tate, they go after his misogyny in a kind of general sense, but Tinashe gets very, very specific. He focuses on the nature of Tate's idea of dom. He plays a clip, and we should probably be careful describing this because it is pretty graphic, but it's Tate describing his philosophy on handling.
It's the infamous choke clip. In the audio, Tate is discussing a hypothetical scenario where a woman is, annoying him or resisting his authority.
Right.
And he doesn't talk about communication or walking away or leaving the room. He describes grabbing her by the neck. He says, and this is a direct quote, choke her so she can barely breathe.
Wow.
Oh.
That's disturbing enough on its own, but it's what comes after that Tinashe really zooms in on it.
It is, because after the physical violence, Tate says, tell her she's yours forever. He talks about programming her. He says, you are programmable beings.
You belong to me.
You belong to me. So Tinashe's argument here, it's theological as much as it is moral. He's saying that Tate has successfully rebranded straight-up abuse as masculinity.
Yeah.
He sold millions of young men the lie that being a force of nature means owning another human being. Tinashe calls it out for what it is, violence and a desire for godlike ownership over someone else's soul.
And then, of course, there's the financial hypocrisy. This is the other huge pillar of the critique against Tate. Tinashe reminds the listener that Tate didn't make his initial fortune, investing in the stock market or building bridges.
No, he admits it. He says it openly. He was a pimp.
He built his entire empire on what he calls the lover boy method, managing webcams.
That's right. And Tinashe plays this clip where Tate is talking to Tucker Carlson, which is, that's a whole surreal interview in itself. And he's explaining that there's a huge industry in managing OnlyFans accounts. He actually says, I teach guys how to do that.
The irony is just staggering.
It's incredible. Tinashe points out this insane contradiction. Tate tells young men that modern women are ruined, that they're all hoes, that Western women have lost their value. Yet his own business model, the very thing he teaches men to do to get rich, is to facilitate that exact degeneracy.
He's teaching men how to become pimps who exploit women for money.
It's a perfect feedback loop. You complain about the culture, but you are actively profiting from making the culture worse. Tinashe calls this spiritual blindness.
That's a good term for it.
He says if you look at Andrew Tate and see a hero, but you willfully ignore the fact that his business model is based on destroying the innocence of women and selling pornography, you are, in Tinashe's own word, morally bankrupt.
Which is a pretty natural transition to the next character in this lineup, Myron Gaines, or Fit from the Fresh and Fit podcast. And Tinashe does not pull any punches here either.
No, not at all.
If Tate is the kingpin of this operation, Myron is kind of the enforcer. Tinashe describes the Fresh and Fit model as a spectacle. It's not an educational platform.
It's not even really a podcast. It's more like a digital coliseum.
Right. The formula is identical every single time. They bring in a group of Miami women, often women who work in nightlife, or they're OnlyFans models, or sometimes just women specifically chosen because they hold what they call blue.
Okay, so they're curating the guest fit the narrative.
Completely. They put them all around a table, and then for the next 2 hours, they just berate them.
Pass them out.
Yeah.
That's the phrase that Tinashe uses over and over. The goal isn't to change the women's minds or have a debate. The goal is to humiliate.
It is. It's to scream at them, kick them off the set, and then watch the live chat go absolutely wild.
Tinashe argues that what they're doing is selecting a very specific, you could say stereotypical, genre of woman to represent all women, just so they can constantly confirm their own bias that all women are trash.
And that creates a content loop of pure hatred. Young men watch this stuff and they think, see, I knew it. All women are like this. I need to treat them all like dirt.
And Tinashe connects this back to the fruit metaphor, which we'll get to deeper in the theology section. But, essentially, he's asking, what is the product of this show? Is it better relationships? Is it happy marriages?
No. Of course not.
No. It's just more men getting angrier and angrier at women on the internet. It's pouring gasoline on the fire.
Okay, so next up in the lineup is Nick. Tinashe refers to him as the Mexican white supremacist, which is a whole other thing to unpack regarding his background versus his ideology.
Right.
But the clip that Tinashe really focuses on is what he calls the Hitler Friday clip.
This is where the mask really, really slips, according to Tinashe. In this clip, Fuentes is laughing. He's clearly in a good mood. And he just says, it's Führer Friday. It's Hitler Friday.
And then he explicitly says Hitler was really fin cool.
He does. And he follows it up with this incredibly strange rationalization. He says, time to grow up. We're not children anymore. As if growing up means coming to the realization that Hitler was actually the good guy.
It's just a bizarre framing of maturity.
It is. And Tinashe's critique here is purely theological. Fuentes claims to be a Christian nationalist. His slogan, his whole brand, is Christ is King.
Right.
So Tinashe asks a very fundamental question. How can you claim to serve the God of Israel, the Jewish Messiah, while you're simultaneously promoting the idolatry of the man who tried to exterminate the entire Jewish people?
And the defense is always, it's just edgy humor, right? They always hide behind, oh, right.
Tinashe doesn't buy that for a second. He quotes scripture on this. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. His point is, if you're constantly joking about how cool Hitler was, eventually we have to believe that that's what's actually in your heart. You cannot have the spirit of God and the spirit of Nazism in the same vessel. Tinashe calls it a contradiction that proves Fuentes is, in his words, godless.
Which leads us to the final character, and honestly, this was the most bizarre revelation of the entire deep dive for Sneeko.
Ah, yes. The meth revelation.
I literally had to rewind the source material to make sure I heard it right. Because usually when we talk about drugs and influencers, it's about partying or addiction in the traditional sense. But this was functional.
It was utilitarian. It was a business decision. Tinashe plays a clip where Sneeko is calmly explaining to his audience why he uses methamphetamine. Not Adderall, meth.
And his logic is just absolutely wild. He gets into the chemistry of it. He says Adderall has levoamphetamine, which gives you physical jitter, but meth is dextromethamphetamine. Smooth.
But the reason he prefers it is the real kicker. He says Adderall suppresses his appetite too much, or it makes him look gaunt. And he explicitly connects his drug use to looks max.
We really need to put a pin in that term looks maxing because it comes up so much in this whole space. For anyone who doesn't know, it's basically internet slang for maximizing any means necessary. Diet, gym, surgery, whatever.
Right, so you have a supposed leader of young men sitting there on a live stream, casually rationalizing the use of hard drugs that are known to destroy faces and lives because he thinks it helps him work on his computer longer while maintaining his jawline.
Tinashe was floored by this. He calls him a junk. But more than that, he points out the insane obsession with vanity, and this really ties into the broader...
It does.
You have a movement that claims to be all about traditional masculinity, being strong, stoic, health, but the leaders are pimping women, screaming at them for clicks, praising Hitler, and doing meth to improve their aesthetic.
It just completely destroys their credibility. How can you possibly tell a 15-year-old boy to be a man and reject modernity when you're literally consuming crystal meth to look better for a webcam?
It is a pretty damning lineup when you lay it all out like that. And this moves us into the real core argument of Tinashe's analysis. It's not just that these guys are bad or that they're hypocrites. It's that their entire worldview is theologically bankrupt. He calls it godless masculinity.
This is the theological disconnect, as he frames. Tinashe is arguing from a completely biblical perspective. He contrasts the red pill view of manhood with the biblical view. And they aren't just a little different, they're polar opposites.
So let's define those for a second. What is the red pill view of masculinity according to...
The red pill view, as he sees it, is that women are essentially objects for conquest. The primary goal of a man is sexual gratification from as many women as possible. The God in this whole equation is the self. It's about being the man that everyone desires. You maximize your money, you maximize your muscles, your status, all so you can have access to women. It is inherently self.
Okay, so that's one side. What's the biblical view he presents?
Tinashe quotes the book of Ephesians. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loves the church.
As Christ loves the church. I mean, that is a high bar.
It's the highest possible bar. And Tinashe really emphasizes that this implies sacrificial love. Christ died for the church. It wasn't about dominance or choking women or programming them or getting value from the church.
It was about laying down your life for it.
Exactly. Tinashe argues that True, biblical masculinity is protective and providing, not predatory and consuming.
And he brings in that metaphor of Matthew, right? What about
Matthew 7. You shall know them by their fruit. And then he asks, do men gather grapes from a bramble bush? It's such a powerful and simple image.
It really is.
Tanesh's point is that you cannot get good, healthy, God-fearing masculinity from a source that is fundamentally rooted in hatred and exploitation.
So if the fruit of these influencers is hatred of women, promoting Hitler, and justifying drug addiction, then the tree, the philosophy they're teaching, it has to be rotten to the core.
That's his whole argument. He says, you cannot gather grapes from a bramble bush. You can't go to a poison well and expect to draw fresh water. It doesn't matter how much money they have or how confident they sound. The source itself is corrupt.
But this raises the million-dollar question then. If the tree is so obviously rotten, why are millions and millions of young men eating the fruit? Why are they flocking to this bramble bush?
And Tinashe addresses this in what we could probably call the Trojan horse segment of his analysis. First, and this is important, he acknowledges the context. He talks about the void left by the left.
So he admits the left has kind of pushed men into a corner in a way.
He does, completely.
Yeah.
He says the mainstream culture, the left, has spent the last decade or more just demonizing masculinity. They've told men that they are inherently toxic, that they have no real purpose, that they should just be quiet and take up less space.
And that creates a vacuum.
A huge vacuum.
Yeah.
Men are starving for any kind of affirmation. They are looking for anyone out there who will say, hey, it's okay to be a man.
And the red pill influencers are standing right there with open arms saying, not only is it okay, you should be a king.
Exactly. And here is where the Trojan horse comes in. Tinashe admits they give good advice.
Right. And that's what's so seductive about it. They say things like, go to the gym, don't be lazy, make money, have ambition, don't let people walk all over you. That stuff resonates.
Of course it does. And Tinashe compares this to the devil. He says the devil doesn't show up with horns and a pitchfork saying, hey, come be evil with me. The devil shows up with good worldly wisdom. You can do it all yourself. You are a god. Make something. The trap is luring men in with the self-help and the fitness tip. Those are the great. But once they're inside the walls, they get fed the poison of misogyny and godless.
It's the classic bait and switch. You come for the bench press tips, you stay for the anti-Semitism.
That's a perfect way to put it. And Tinashe notes that once they're in, the entire value system shifts. We talked about looks maxing earlier. Tinashe argues there has been a fundamental shift from building character to curating aesthetic.
That is a really fascinating observation.
He notes that this new generation of so-called alpha males is ironically obsessed with vanity. He says they spend more time in the mirror than their women. They're obsessed with, in his words, feminizing themselves, fixing their eyebrows, their jawlines, their skincare routine, all for the purpose of being desired.
He says they are worshiping at the altar of being desired. The goal for masculinity used to be something like build character, provide for a family, be a rock for your...
Right.
Now the goal is look hot, drive a Bugatti, and have a harem of women. It's pure narcissism disguised as masculinity.
And this brings us to the real danger here.
Yeah.
Because we aren't just talking about 25-year-old guys on Tinder trying to get dates. We're talking about children.
This is the most alarming part of Tinashe's whole analysis for me. He says this brainwashing is happening to 10, 11, and 12-year-old boys, Gen Alpha, and late Gen Z.
They're mimicking these behaviors. They are quoting Andrew Tate in middle school hallways.
They're looking up to these men as their surrogate father. Tinashe uses this really powerful term. He calls them the digital dictator.
Whoever is on the screen becomes the dictator of the child's personality. I mean, that is a haunting line.
It really is. It used to be that your influences were local. You know, it was your dad, your uncle, your coach, the kids you played with in the neighborhood. And those people were, at least in theory, accountable.
Yeah, they were real people in your life.
Right. Now, a global influencer who might be a pimp or a meth user living in another country can reach directly into your child's bedroom through an iPad and completely dictate their values.
And Kino shares his own story here, which I found really, really compelling. He talks about how he grew up in a stable, two-parent household. His parents had been together since they were teenagers. He saw a model of a good, healthy marriage every single day of his life.
And yet, he still fell into the trap.
He admits it. He calls himself a former womanizer and a human synthesizer, basically using humans as products. He fell into New Age self-worship, all of that.
So his point is, a good home environment isn't enough protection if you aren't vigilant against this stuff. The digital influence is just too aggressive. The algorithm is stronger than your passive example.
It's a constant battle.
So what is the solution? What's the call to action? Tinashe basically issues a direct mandate to parents.
He compares it to spiritual warfare. It's that serious. He asked parents, if you found out a Satanist cult was meeting in your neighborhood and your kid was going to the meeting, you'd intervene, right?
Well, yeah, you'd be down there immediately, you'd call the police, you'd lock the doors, you'd do something.
He says, but you let them sit on their iPad and watch Sneeko and Tate for hours on end, and you think it's fine. He's telling parents they have to wake up. You must know who these people are. You cannot afford to be ignorant of the content your son is consuming.
And he says it's not enough to just provide or, take your kids to Disney World once a year. That's the provider trap. We think that if we pay the bills and keep a roof over their head, we've done our job as...
Tanesh challenges parents direct. He says you need to be rooted in the Word. You need to be studying Scripture more than your kids are studying social media. You have to be able to counter the hypocrisy with actual truth.
It's not a passive role.
Not at all. He mentions that he went to Catholic school, he has friends who went to Christian schools, and they were all still falling into this trap. Just putting a religious label on something isn't enough. You have to actually embody the values you want them to learn, or the internet will just teach them its values instead.
And the internet's values in this specific case are godless. Tanesh is very, very clear on this. There is no middle ground for him. You can follow the god of self that's offered by the red pill, which he believes leads to the void, to that hellscape of the nightclub.
Or you can follow the creator and the biblical truth of sacrificial love. He sees it as a binary choice.
It really does feel like a battle for the definition of reality. Young. Are women people to be loved and protected, or are they objects to be programmed and choked? Is success defined by character and service to others, or is it defined by drug-fueled vanity and accumulating wealth?
And Tanash's final warning, the real end game he sees, is that this Manosphere Alliance isn't just a group of edgy content creators looking for views. He believes it is a spiritual trap designed to completely destroy the institution of marriage.
That's the ultimate goal,
Think about it. If you successfully teach an entire generation of men that marriage is a scam, that women are the enemy, and that the only thing that truly matters is the self, what happens to society? What happens to the family unit? What does the next generation of fathers even look like?
Yeah, if looks maxing and meth are the new standards of self-improvement, we are in some very deep trouble.
It raises a terrifying question, if the leaders of the next generation are men who dance to songs about Hitler and openly admit to hating women, who's going to be left to build a functional society? Who's going to be left to raise the children?
That is a very provocative thought to leave you all with. It's not just about internet drama. Tanesh Peter is framing this as a fight for the future of the family. He's drawing a clear line in the sand. He's saying you can't be a Christian nationalist and a Hitler fanboy. You can't be a high-value man and a junk. You have to
And his message to parents is that you have to actively help your son make that choice before the algorithm makes.
We've linked Tanesh Peter's channel in the show notes if you want to watch the full breakdown for you. And trust me, the fire. That's it for this deep dive. Stay vigilant out there. Stay curious. Catch you on the next one.
Goodbye, everyone.